Yo, what's up everybody? How's it going? I like lists, in particular tier lists. And I also like Dota event modes. Well, you know, some of them. I thought it would be fun to make a list ranking all of the different event modes. So what I did is I went and I looked at all of them as they came out, and I kind of just, put them in a tier list, and we're gonna go through them. We're gonna go see which ones I like the most, which ones I like the least. Now, before we get into this, quick disclaimer, I'm not going to include Frostivus 2017, because Frostivus 2017 was part of the custom games contest that happened at the time, and as some of you might know, I participated in that, and frankly speaking, to this day, I'm still not very happy with how things ended in regards to that custom game contest. Valve kind of, fucked the custom games community a little bit, and it was just a bit of a disaster all around. So I've decided to just exclude it from the ranking, even though there was a mode, we're just not gonna talk about it. Alright, but we're gonna talk about everything else. Alright, let's get started with our last place. By far, it's really not even close, and that will be Fighting the Year Beast. Yeah, that's its actual name. It doesn't even have a proper name. It's just Fighting the Year Beast. It's New Bloom 2014. And in this mode, you have a big year beast that you're tossed into an arena with, and then you have to spend 25 minutes beating it up, and then at the end you get a high score based on how much damage you did. If that sounds boring, that's because it was. That's all I have to say. It's just really bad. You shouldn't play it. Admittedly, you can't anymore, because it's also one of those things where nobody made a custom game of it, of course, because it was really boring. It was just exceedingly boring. It also, if I remember correctly, now I'm not entirely sure if I'm correct here, but if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure that it was pay to win. So that didn't help it either. So yeah, anyway, absolute trash, just the worst one by far. Let's move on. Next on the list, we have Diatite 2012. This might surprise you, but I don't really like Diatite that much. I've talked about this a few times in the past, but I always felt that the Diatite modes were just kind of overrated. And I know it's in the community, it's a meme to like, hey, bring back Diatite, right? But the thing is that bring back Diatite is really less about Diatite, it's more about like, give us an event mode. That's how I always interpreted that. Because Diatite itself actually wasn't that interesting. It's just like, play Dota on the normal Dota map, but with like some quirky extra rules that make it really annoying. And honestly, the same thing is true for the next entry, which is just Diatite 2013, which I also don't really like for the exact same reason, because it's just Dota on the normal Dota map, but with some annoying extra rules. And you try to play Dota, you want to be, beating up your opponent, but then you also have to worry about all of this other stuff. And we have to acknowledge that these were kind of the first modes that were released like this, right? This was kind of like when Dota was still in its early stages, and in a way I can kind of forgive that, but that doesn't really mean I like the modes very much. Next up, we have New Bloom 2015, which is the Year Beast Brawl. In this mode, you have a Year Beast that spawns in every 5 minutes, that runs down a lane and beats everything up in the lane. It can get special abilities, you can upgrade it, and it's not that fun, because it's just normal Dota, but annoying. You may recognize the pattern here. It's at least a bit less annoying than Diatite, in my opinion, because at the very least, the Year Beast only spawns every 5 minutes, as opposed to being there the entire time. So that's better. But I'm not a big fan of New Bloom 2015. I didn't play it much when it was released, and it's just not that fun a mode in my opinion. Next up is Wrath of the Morokai, which is the same mode as New Bloom 2015, just a bit newer and a little better, but still not very good. And I don't really have much else to say about it, because it's just the same mode, just kind of rebranded. I gotta say, it might have been ranked a little higher, because this one was actually a lot better than New Bloom 2015, but the fact that it's just the same mode really makes me just kind of not want to rank it that highly. So it's gonna be the top of D tier. And now, headed into C tier, we have Nemesis. Yeah, no, seriously, I just don't like it that much. It's just, you go onto a map and then you 5 versus 5 people the entire game, non-stop. Right? It's just team fight after team fight after team fight. And then backdooring a lot, like taking down the towers with meteor hammers and all of that stuff. It's very similar to Dota 2020, which had a lot of the exact same problems, being that you just kind of want to team fight a lot and rush down the towers. I personally just don't enjoy it very much. Again, it's a bit better than the previous modes because at least it's not on the normal Dota map. At least it has a separate map, making it a bit more playable in my opinion. But still not one of my favorites. Pretty much the exact same reasoning applies for Dota 2020, but at least with Dota 2020, I kind of thought it was cute. You know, Roshan chases you down and is like, give me candy! And, you know, you have to like little graphical filter that they put on everything that makes it look unique. I know that I know a lot of people didn't really like that graphical filter, but for me personally, I actually thought it was kind of fun and kind of cute. And, you know, it's just an event mode. It's not going to stick around anyway. So I liked it more than Nemesis. I'm still not a big fan of it. And then for the final game in the C tier, we have the Grieveling. Which, yeah, the Grieveling was weird. So it's also just a normal Dota map mode, right? Kind of like Diatide and New Bloom and all of that. But at least it was really strange because you could become these long Greevilles and they have all kinds of weird abilities and you could like slip and slide around on the river, which was kind of nice. Like, here's the thing, something you guys should know about me by now is that if a game isn't good, there's still a good chance that I'll like it as long as it's just adequately weird. And Grieveling it's strange. It's a strange game. So I'm just gonna go ahead and say Grieveling passes my test and is gonna be the top of C tier. B tier only houses 2 modes. The first one being Haunted Colosseum. And this is where we really enter the good modes, I would say. Haunted Colosseum was quite fun. It still exists as a custom game in the arcade. In case you don't know how Haunted Colosseum works, it basically tosses 2 teams into like this little arena and then you fight over capture points, right? So there's a capture point in the middle and if you capture that, then you now need to capture the next point, and then if your opponent captures that instead, then you fight over the one in the middle again. If they capture that, you move back. You know, it's kind of a tug of war. And I really liked it as that tug of war. I thought it was interesting. Not necessarily because the tug of war part was the most interesting, but the Colosseums were. And the Colosseums were legitimately cool because they had all kinds of like fun little traps and contraptions that you could activate. The big glaives that would come down and just like slice everybody in half. Honestly, it had a lot of really fun ideas and I think they worked pretty well. Now, to be honest, it kind of suffers a little bit, I think, from the fact that it still exists. So that's probably kind of why I ranked it so lowly. It could even be ranked higher, but it's just the fact that it's still around means that it's been played a lot over the time and you kind of start seeing the problems with it, where it's quite snowbally and yeah. It was fun though while it was out as an event mode, and I liked it for that. And then our second game in the B tier is going to be WRAITH-NIGHT. This is the first of the Horde modes. Alright, this is kind of the original one, where, first of all, that's when we first saw Wraith King, which is kind of fun. But yeah, it's just you have a base that you need to defend, and then you have hordes of enemies coming at you. This is definitely the most basic of all of them. We got to see this a few more times as they released new modes. But I thought it was quite fun for the time, right? Again, it was still fairly basic, but it was a good mode. And I don't really have too much to say about that one because we're going to talk about the follow-ups to that in just a second. In A tier, at the bottom, we have, surprisingly, a normal Dota mode, Mutation mode. Yeah, Mutation mode is kind of what we are doing a lot on the channel these days, which is the Dota buds, right? It's like Dota, but with some extra rules. And Mutation mode really kind of brought that into like more of a mainstream setting, where you could queue like a proper matchmaking based mode, and then you get a bunch of extra rules like cooldown reduction, or you could place towers, which was kind of fun. All kinds of different weird rules that just made the games strange And as I just said, if a game isn't gonna be good, if it's strange, I might still be on board. And mutation mode was definitely quite strange. Now, I can't rank it higher than this. I think even this might be a bit generous because it was incredibly buggy and abusable. And that was really its main problem, is that it was so easy to just abuse the shit out of everything in there. I just remember when you could have Arc Warden and then place a bunch of towers with Arc Warden. So like Arc Warden's illusion, right, gets to use Arc Warden's abilities. But you usually would have this tower which you have one of, right? It's just a one-time consumable item. But with Arc Warden's illusion, you could just like reuse it over and over again and just place a bunch of towers all over the map. A bunch of nonsense. It had a lot of issues, but it was still a lot of fun. And I kind of wish they had continued working on it. But you know what? It's Valve. They don't really do that. So, you know. Anyway. Now, in A tier as well, we have Dark Moon and Frosthaven. I personally think Dark Moon is a little bit better than Frosthaven. And usually I'm kind of like working my way up here. So I would talk about Frosthaven first, but I'm going to talk about Dark Moon first right now, which is mostly just because Dark Moon came out first. So Dark Moon was kind of the expanded version of WRAITH-NIGHT, right? Where you now have lots and lots of interesting, unique waves that you're fighting. You have the big, fancy invoker boss at the end. The mode was really difficult. I remember that. That was just like really hard. A lot of people really struggled to beat it. And it just had a lot of really cool ideas, right? And it was fun to play. I thoroughly enjoyed Dark Moon. And then they released Frosthaven, which I ranked a little lower than Dark Moon, but honestly, like they're kind of even, right? Frosthaven was the follow-up, this time around with Rubik as the final boss, and other than that, it was just kind of like a winter-themed version of it with some upgrades, some smaller changes here and there, but overall it was mostly the same game mode. And it was still really fun. I really liked it. Honestly, this is to me where the Valve modes are at their best, right? When they aren't about fighting other players so much, instead they are mostly about fighting the computer, right? Fighting NPCs, fighting weird creeps that come attacking you. To me, that's when they are at their most fun. Because if you play, you know, against other players, then somebody's gonna have to suffer from it, right? If I do well, you're gonna have to do worse. And that's not necessarily true with Frosthaven and Dark Moon. So I really enjoyed those modes. I understand that some people maybe didn't like them as much because they were so difficult, and that kind of made it so that if you didn't have a group to play it with, then it could be a bit difficult to actually beat it. But you know what? I had a group to play it with, and I really enjoyed it. And this is where we enter S tier, and probably the most controversial pick of this list. My first game mode in S tier here is the Underhollow. Yeah, Underhollow. Remember the Battle Royale dungeon crawler that they made? That was when Fortnite was at its peak. When Fortnite was like the big... Everybody was all about the Battle Royales. Oh my god, Battle Royale. And then Valve releases Dota Battle Royale. And everybody freaked out. Now, here's the thing. To be honest, is Underhollow better than Dark Moon or Frosthaven? Probably not. But I really enjoyed it. I had such a good time playing it. Because I played a lot with my friends at the time. And what we would do is we would go into Underhollow and just try to clear it as quickly as possible. In case you don't know how that works, in Underhollow, you are tossed into this map, which has lots of small little chambers. And in each chamber, there's like enemies you have to kill, and you can get some loot. And then you have to move through the chambers into the center of the map. And the further into the center you go, the stronger the enemies get, but also the better the loot. And, you know, if you encounter enemy teams along the way, then you kill them. And if somebody on your team gets killed, then they leave a little tombstone behind. You can resurrect them. But if everybody on your team gets killed, then they're dead. You lost. You get knocked out. I think there were 3 or 4 player teams. I don't know, maybe chat can tell me there which one it was. I don't quite remember right now. But I remember that I had a really good time just going in there with my friends, and we just tried our best to like wreck shit. And I really liked it for what it was. And there was a lot of fun stuff you could do with it. We tried to kind of like speedrun it, which is silly, right? Speedrunning a competitive mode. But, you know, I think one time we like cleared the entire thing in like 10 minutes, which was very fast. And I just had a good time playing it. But you know what? Like, I understand if you didn't, right? Because I said a second ago that for me to be able to stomp an underhollow match, somebody has to get stomped, and then it can be frustrating. So yeah, this is definitely something that's a bit of a personal favorite, just because I had kind of like a really fun group to play it with, but I really deeply, thoroughly enjoyed it. Next in S tier, we have SILTBREAKER, Act 1 and Act 2. Now, personally, I thought Act 1 was a little better than Act 2, but that's just me. But overall, SILTBREAKER was incredible. In case you don't know what SILTBREAKER is a co-op campaign. So it's basically you have a team of people that you play it with, and you go through a campaign where there's enemies to fight, you level up as you go through, you kind of pick up some items, and then there's like kind of like a little bit of story elements here and there, lots of little bits of lore that you can pick up, but you fight enemies and then you move through an area and then there's a boss, you kill the boss and you go into the next area. Honestly, beating like a full act of SILTBREAKER took quite a while. I think the first act, the first time I went through that, took like 2 hours. And that was just like actually completing it. Like even getting to the point of being able to complete it took a lot longer than that, because it's again quite difficult. But yeah, no, I thought it was great for what it was. Honestly, it was a really interesting, fun campaign. I know that a lot of people really enjoyed it for the lore, right? There was a lot of like story elements, like new things you could learn about Dota there, that I can see how people might really appreciate that and might really enjoy it. So while it wasn't really for me, I think it was something that worked very well for a lot of people. And that was really what made SILTBREAKER so special, in my opinion, is that it was something that, a lot of people, even if they weren't necessarily into Dota, could play and enjoy. So yeah, it was a very fun mode. It wasn't as difficult as Darkmoon and Frosthaven either, at least not in my opinion, which was good because it meant that you could actually clear it even if you didn't have a full group. And yeah, all around, SILTBREAKER I thought was fantastic. I loved that it was 2 campaigns too. It was like 2 lengthy campaigns as well. And honestly, it had a pretty big impact on custom games as well, because there's so many assets that they created that, people have been using ever since, which is kind of wild. Finally, the big one. My personal favorite. I think this is not a surprise to anyone. I think if I were to poll anybody watching right now, what is their favorite Dota event mode, then we would all give the same answer. Unless you preferred SILTBREAKER, but I feel like most people are going to be like me and say that Aghanim's Labyrinth is easily the best event mode that they've ever made. I mean, it's not even close in my eyes. It is so good. First of all, I love roguelikes, right? Like, that's immediately a thing. I love roguelites. Aghanim's Labyrinth is one. That's already great. Second, I love how much energy and humor they managed to put into it, like so much character. Let me go ahead and explain what Aghanim's Labyrinth is really quick for the 3 people among you who don't know. But it's basically, you have a team again, right, 4 players, and you go into this kind of labyrinth, right, where you go through separate rooms, and each room has kind of different things to do in it. So usually you fight enemies, but in some rooms you just have to go through this kind of like more movement-based puzzle, or sometimes there's a big boss that you have to take down. And you could always choose between which rooms you want to go, and every room also showed you which reward you're going to get afterwards. And Aghanim's Labyrinth came in multiple difficulties, which was also great. So the first difficulty was kind of tough, but very much manageable. And then it got really hard in the later difficulties. And that was always something where I think it's a bit... This is maybe like just my personal opinion, but I know that a lot of gamers seem to be of the opinion that there's no like value to games being accessible by not necessarily by having difficulty tiers. But I think there's really a lot of good that comes from just making games a bit more accessible to people by including different difficulty options, right? So that everybody can kind of enjoy it. Not everybody plays games just to go super hard. And Aghanim's Labyrinth was still kind of tough at the lowest difficulty, but then, you could beat it and you could actually see everything. But the higher difficulties is where it got really, really, really rough. On top of that, Aghanim's Labyrinth was a roguelike, so you got fun little upgrades, right? You could change your hero's abilities in ways that were crazy, and honestly, I kind of wish that like some of those effects were in normal Dota. That would be a lot of fun. In particular, what I did in one of my runs is I managed to take the Weaver bugs and we reduced the attack rate on them to 0.1 seconds, which may not sound crazy, but the thing is that that results in huge DPS and huge armor reduction, allowing me to like basically one-shot everything. But in Aghanim's Labyrinth, you can also get like a little shard, I think is what they call it, that buffs your Weaver bugs so that they can affect allies and heal them instead. So it was like the super healing Weaver as well as the super DPS. That was just hella fun. And then, you know, after you beat it, you just play it again, you get the higher difficulty, everything becomes tougher. It's just a great mode. Great mode. So much character as well. You always have Aghanims in the background, kind of like giving his voice over, and I think they did such a fantastic job with it. I mean, honestly, I'm surprised that Aghanim hasn't become a hero yet. Just because I really expected that from the Aghanim's Labyrinth. Because they also put so much work into, you know, voicing him and having a really cool model for him and all of that. So yeah, I absolutely 100% loved Aghanim's Labyrinth, and if they ever bring any mode back, that's the one. I want them to bring back Aghanim's Labyrinth and just do some more stuff with it, right? Just like add more shit, add more heroes, add more rooms. I know there's a custom game that does it, but there's a certain charm to it if it's like more of an official mode, right? Then more people care about it, more people are gonna play it, and that increases competition and just makes it feel a bit more alive. So I really like Aghanim's Labyrinth. I hope that they eventually bring it back or do something similar. And honestly, I think Aghanim's Labyrinth in a way has like ruined everything that Valve is gonna release in the future. Because I highly doubt they're gonna put that much work into a mode again, right? That would really surprise me because that must have been a massive effort. And I'm not saying that I doubt that they're gonna put that much work in again, because I'm trying to diss Valve here. I'm just like blown away by how much work they put into Aghanim's Labyrinth, right? It's crazy. And then we get stuff like Nemesis and Diatide afterwards. And, you know, like, they're not my favorite. I don't think they're terrible, but they're just not my favorite. And they just feel so hollow compared to Aghanim's Labyrinth, which had so much spirit, so much cool stuff in it. Anyway, I'm hoping that we get to see that again. And I'm hoping you guys enjoyed this video. So something a bit unusual from what we normally do, but I just thought I would give it a try. To tell you a secret, I'm currently on my stream. I'm doing Dota for a week, which means I don't play Dota for a week. I thought this was like a way I could make Dota content that doesn't involve me playing it. Don't worry, we'll bring back normal Dota content next week. I just wanted to see if what happens if I just don't do any Dota stuff for a week. So yeah. Anyway, so far it's been fun. We've been playing a lot of Pokemon mostly. That's it. We've just been playing a shit ton of Pokemon. Anyway, tomorrow we're going to do our fun little RPG adventure, assuming I get it done in time. I have not really worked on it, oh dear god. But it should be fine. It should be fine, right? It should be fine. Anyway, I'll see you guys around. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a rating on the video. If you want me to make any other cool lists, then please let me know. I'm down. I like lists. I watch tier lists of shit I don't even give a shit about just because I like lists. I don't know, they're fun. Anyway, I'll see you guys around.